in your head, in your head, in
You're the
your
backup singer.
head.
Well,
Yeah,
I
I'm just
think
backup.
what an intro, right? We're gonna have a
Right.
little zombie cocktail, and we're gonna talk about the consequences of a weak brand.
Weak brand. And the
Which
cranberries,
the
like, in their
cranberries,
time, were not a weak brand. Like, they
no,
were
still
great.
aren't. I mean, like,
I feel like they've slipped a little bit. I guess we can talk about that. We'll have to ask Megan.
they,
We have a guest.
yes,
Guest alert. Megan is our guest. Graphic
she'll be
designer
joining us
extraordinaire. We'll ask her if
momentarily.
how she feels about the cranberries. And she'll be like, the Who? And like, no,
I
not the Who. They're an older band. The cranberries. Ba-dum-bum. Dad
Oh my
joke.
god.
Tuesday. Thursday. It's Thursday, I
Don't-
guess, when everybody's listening to this.
Don't.
Yes, we're going to talk about how a weak brand can impact your company's success. And Megan's going to share her expertise. She does help build brands for companies,
She
like
sure
from
does.
the visual to the additional stuff that encompass a brand, because a brand is not just your logo.
Ugh. If I had a nickel.
I know that it is funny. I'd have like 45 cents, but still. No. Oh, did you see? You weren't there yesterday. Or were you there yesterday? So I was in the Sioux City office and I was switching bags. So I got a new backpack.
Yes, you're
It's
$75.
here. And yeah, I found $75 in my old backpack in random pockets that I hadn't, like, I didn't even know it was there. So
Like $75 not together in separate, different pockets. You
so
just
there
had
were three
cash
20s
stash?
folded together. One pocket had a 10 in it. Another pocket had 2 ones in it. And then I found 3 ones in a different pocket. And then I have a random 20 on my desk right now. So I got like $95. I can go do some damage.
You
somewhere.
could. I mean, like, that's a decent dinner with a couple of cocktails for one, you know?
It is. I wonder how many zombies it would buy me if I went down to, is it La Colona? Is that right?
La Colona.
In here in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have the zombie. I'm sure they do.
Absolutely.
Because it is.
It's a pretty standard tiki drink, for sure.
Yep. And thanks to Hollywood Don the Beachcomber. In 1934, it was invented by him at Donn Beach. Don with 2 N's, not to be confused with Hollywood Don with 1 N.
I don't know who Hollywood
So it was the Beachcomber restaurant. Oh, no, it was, I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Never mind. I'm just reading these notes and my eyes are blurry because they're watering.
Yeah.
The guy's name was Donn Beach.
Yes.
The restaurant was Hollywood Don the Beachcomber. Wow, I thought Hollywood Don the Beachcomber was the dude, but I am wrong. And
Yes.
it was on the East Coast soon afterwards because it was featured at the 1939 New York World's Fair. So
It's interesting.
it's a
'Cause
famous
I mean,
worldly
like,
drink.
I always think of tiki as like 50s, but I suppose, you know.
It is,
close.
I mean, well, people were obviously drinking rum before that. I wonder if tiki, we'll have to look up the etymology of tiki, and did it like come about in the 50s as like a concept?
I think a lot of it is like post-war return, like the beach influence of being in like Vietnam, 50s, 60s, like Southeast Asia, Hawaii. Like there's like a military tie-in.
So here's the spoiler. I just looked up origin of the tiki drink, and this is the original tiki drink.
Yeah.
Like the
Yes.
original. They were
sorry,
called
I
rum
didn't
rhapsodies before this, and those were the first tiki drinks. And
You know
his
why
would
it's
have fresh
called a zombie,
juices.
though, right?
No, it wasn't called a zombie.
No, I know, but why it's called a zombie now? Because it kind of turns you into one.
It turns you into one, yeah, because it's loaded with booze. Like he would put up to 10 ingredients in these things. So I think that's a good
lot
cue
of
for
tiki
you
places will say that you can only have like 1 or 2 of these, and then they'll cut you off.
Yeah, it's like Long Island iced teas, right? Like one of
Which
those,
are
and you're
gross.
like, they are. This is much better.
This recipe also has one of my favorite standard tiki ingredients, falernum.
Oh,
Which in the pandemic, when my in-home bartender was making a lot of cocktails, he said, I need to get some falernum. And I thought he was having like a vocal stroke.
Falernum.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, that sounds Irish. What is it? So then you have to say it falernum. You have to say it with the
Falernum.
falernum. Yeah. But a zombie is 1.5 ounces of Jamaican rum, 1.5 ounces of Puerto Rican gold rum, 1 ounce of 151 proof demerara rum. So that's
4 ounces of rum.
Four full shots of alcohol. 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice, 1/2 ounce of Donn's mix, which we will talk about in a moment, and 1/2 ounce of falernum, as discussed, and then a teaspoon or a dash of grenadine, and then 4 dashes of Pernod, and that is an anise liqueur and absinthe. Ugh. And then a dash of Angostura bitters.
See, I love that black licoriciness, and this is just a little hint of it. It's just 4 dashes. Do.
So you're going to add your Jamaican rum, Puerto Rican rum, demerara rum, Pernod, lime juice, Donn's mix, falernum, grenadine, and bitters into a blender. And then you're going to add 6 ounces of crushed ice. Blend at high speed for no more than 5 seconds. Who's telling? Blend for as long as you want it to be. If you want a real slush, go for it. Then you're going to pour the contents.
Be more crushed ice, instead of full on slush is what they're looking for.
I don't know. Do what you want. If you're going to drink that much rum, you should have carte blanche to make your own choices. Pour the contents into a tall glass, a tiki mug. I think this looks really cute in a hurricane. The bulb and the floor, it kind of looks like a flower vase. And then add additional crushed ice to fill if necessary. Garnish with a mint sprig. Probably ought to throw in a cocktail umbrella and maybe a twisty straw just to really zhuzh it up. To make your Donn's mix, you're going to bring 3 crushed cinnamon sticks, 1 cup of sugar, and 1 cup of water to a boil, stirring until the sugar is completely dissolved. Simmer for 2 minutes, remove from heat, and let it sit for a couple hours to cool, and then strain into a clean plastic bottle. And then to finish, you can add 1 part of the syrup to 2 parts fresh grapefruit juice. Cover and keep refrigerated for up to 2 weeks. So it's basically like cinnamon simple syrup with grapefruit juice.
So I would do that cinnamon simple syrup in coffee or something, or cocoa. That'd be real delicious. Okay.
I could take or leave a zombie, if we're being honest. That recipe, per usual, comes from liqueur.com. Zombie tea. It's not my favorite, but that's mostly because I don't like to peel paint when I enjoy a cocktail.
Well, I also don't like to get, fall off my stool from my first 2 cocktails. I really like that to come at the 6th or 7th cocktail.
The Surgeon General wants to have words with you.
Yeah, I haven't said much in a while, but normally I say, you can double the booze. It's totally fine. Do not double the booze on this one. It's 4 ounces. That's plenty of what's going on in here.
That's one.
Yes. All right.
That's a lot.
So we got a zombie. We got the origination. I don't know what I'm saying.
Have you had some rum already?
I know, right? This is just water. I swear it's just water. It might be vodka. I don't know. Origins of the Tiki cocktail.
Vodka onto my podcast.
I know, you prefer gin.
Get out of here.
If it was gin, it would actually have a little hint of color because those are the gins that we have, the flavored ones that have a little...
Oh, you have all of the schmearmy ones?
Yeah, we're very fancy there. But I'm trying to drink through them in case I have to move in the near future. That's a tangent for another time.
I don't think we have time for that ever.
All right. So zombies and weak brands. So weak brands with Megan when we come back. All right. The little countdown's over. We're back. There's a little 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that we get. Thankfully, because Zach used to have to do it with his hand. Now he doesn't have to.
It's very archaic.
Our goal is to have Zach do as little work as possible on these podcasts. Not really. He does a lot of work on these podcasts, especially afterwards, dealing with all of our random stuff. So Megan is here. Hi, Megan. We're doing video now, Meg. So you're on video. Your hair looks good, though.
Thank you. I was a little
Maggie.
nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little nervous. I was like, oh gosh, because there's the added video part. It's fun. It's an interactive visual, obviously, for our viewers. But
Yeah,
you
well, I'm wearing
gotta
these
worry about
stupid
your
headphones.
RBF a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, not really. Like, I don't think Caitlin's ever been concerned about that. And Lord knows
I'm not sure
sometimes
how to
I'm
take
just
that.
like looking up. It's that you are confident, and if you've got an RBF, you've got an RBF, and people need to deal with it.
Maybe
You are
I'm
a grown-ass
just
woman,
thinking
and your
really
face
hard.
can say whatever you want it to say.
I said that earlier. I was like, oh, my face isn't being nice right now.
Yeah,
Whoops.
there's a lot of things that I don't say with my mouth, but my face just screams them out. And I'm like, okay. I used to have a good poker face, but it scared people, and so I've tried to show my emotions more.
Yeah.
All right, but we're here
That's
to talk about
smart.
weak brands. So what's the easiest way to know you have a weak brand, Megan? How do I know?
I would generally say if there's a lot of inconsistencies, you don't have really a full-fledged like either brand guide, brand standards that you're sticking to. It's just kind of a DIY logo and then some other elements, and your brand never looks the same or like communicates the same to your audience. That's an issue, and that's a weak brand.
So if you're a hot mess, basically, like if I ask you like, hey, what's your brand color? And you're like, oh, I don't know. Sometimes it's this green, sometimes it's blue. It's like most people will know like a PMS color or a hex code, like,
Yep.
or at least like orange is our primary color and navy is our secondary. Though sometimes we
Yeah.
flip those. It's really fun. So yeah, and I think the lack of documentation, that's a big one.
Ooh,
If nothing
yeah.
is written down, you've got a weak brand.
Yeah.
Probably. There are small exceptions where you could have a very strong
Yeah.
brand without the documentation or anything around it. Extremely rare, and most people on this call, like winning the lottery, or on not this call, on listening to this, will not fall in that category.
I was gonna say, I feel like that would be maybe graphic designers or like high-level marketing execs where it's just like drilled in your head, and that's about it.
Or like a niche clothing brand can get really tight, but usually that's because they've put so much into the design of the clothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think so my brand is just my logo though, right?
No.
I know. All right, so very cool. Yeah, it's so much more than that. We've talked about that before. I think we had an
What else
episode
is it?
called Your Brand is More Than Your Logo.
Probably. We should recap that, though. What else is it?
I mean, if you think about like your brand voice, how are you communicating, and like what kind of words or like tone are you using to communicate to your audience? We obviously have the visual part of it, so like your brand identity and like the visual storytelling that you can have with that. So like we said, colors, your logo variations, kind of like your imagery, style and tone. Whether you're doing like in-house photography or like what does your stock photography look like? Is that consistent? You also have kind of like the company culture aspect to it. So like, how are you representing yourself as a company? And we'll kind of dig into that a little bit more, but those are just some examples.
Yep, those are good ones. You just like, it's like you know this stuff or something. No, that was really good. Because I was like, well, it's your font, and I mean, I know what your brand is, but right, it's like if you were a person, what kind of person would you be? Are you a resting bitch face brand, or are you a I'm always smiling? Can your brand raise one eyebrow like Caitlin can? I cannot do one eyebrow. Even if I try, they both go up. Never been a skill of
Dorothy
mine.
can do it too. It's terrifying. She did it to me the other day, and I was like, "You better put the fucking eyebrow down." Like,
Okay. Wow.
I'm not ready for me to look at my own face.
You created it.
I did. I did.
Okay, so my brand is a hot mess. I have a weak brand. Who cares? Do I care? I should care, right, Megan? I think.
Yeah.
So why is it important? Like, I know that brands can be expensive and people complain about it and, getting the full brand work all together.
Yeah.
I think ours is pretty affordable for what it is. I've done several of those and I see people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for stuff. But if you have to have the investment to get the payoff. So if you don't,
I was
Go
just gonna
ahead.
say, like, if you think about a lot of our kind of like fan favorite brands, at least in the US, like this very strong brand identity, like companies out there, like when you think of McDonald's, Starbucks, Apple, kind of like, the bigger conglomerate companies, you know their brand from their packaging. Their locations are distinguishable, and you also have like more sensory experiences that you can kind of recognize it. Like when you go to McDonald's, you're like, oh, the fries, or kind of when you go into Apple, like there's a lot of like kind of that visual storytelling within how their locations are set up, and then also then comes in their logo and their like logo variations. It's all very recognizable, and not having a strong identity can create like confusion or compete with your brand awareness. So it's like, do you have consistency? Is your brand easily recognizable amongst local or national competitors?
And can I talk about it, right? You can. So I was thinking as you were doing that, I'm like, what's funny is like you talk about the smell in like a McDonald's or even a Panera. It's like the
Yeah.
bread going in. Even Subway, like I'm not a huge Subway fan, but the bread smells great when you're smelling it. And I was thinking like Apple, I'm like, I feel like they have the absence of all smell in those stores. Like I don't think there's any smell.
They
And
just
then I
have
was thinking,
deodorizers going crazy.
they might. I mean, it's possible that could be part of the brand, that clean neutral, because I mean, it's all white and black and wood. Like it's all these simple tones in there. So maybe.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about total gonna call myself out here, but guilty pleasure. I watch Emily in Paris on Netflix, and
It's
there.
show.
It is a good show. I thought it's an easy show and it's cute.
It's
Okay.
good.
I'm in
Okay.
safe company.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, I was like,
but
nobody here is judging you.
they have that client that does perfumes, and then they had the hotel client, and they did the signature scent for
crossover.
their hotels. And so I do know also that retail stores, and I know that a very large furniture store here in Omaha does this, they will have smells pushed throughout the store. So they actually have
Yep.
they have speakers for music. They have scent distributors in the ceiling, and so like in the
That's
kitchen
wild.
area they'll put out like chocolate chip cookie
Fresh
smell
baked
Oh my God,
and
yes.
things like that. Yep. So it's
Draws you in.
but it's always subtle. Like it's not like walking through the perfume department in a department store. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well, that's just like a headache.
I
waiting to
remember like
happen.
I worked at Bath and Body Works for a little bit, and like they always had, I think it was like one of the candles, one of the signature scents for the season was always burning, and it kind of gave you a headache. Like it was so kind of intense was you're standing in there for so long. But as a customer, when
Yep.
you come in, you're like, oh, that smells really good. Let me go in. Like you said, it really, there's different ways for your brand to kind of like communicate what it is and like what's going on and why you should come in and attract customers rather than just like the visual part of a brand.
100%. And scents don't work for everybody. I mean, case in point, Apple. Though I do feel like the lack of scent is probably purposeful. I appreciate it because I am allergic to everything, every soap, every scent, like everything makes me sneeze or itch. So anytime I get a neutral environment, I do love it. I do also want to point out, like you brought up some really great ones that people think of as more high-end brands, but even like a Walmart has a very strong brand. They stand for low prices. They do their markdowns. They you know what you're getting when you go there. Like it should be cheaper than other places, but it's also not going to be super fancy. But you can also just go in your sweatpants. So
Pajamas.
You can do that anywhere. Like I hope that's not holding you back from like Target, because Target's chill like that.
I ran into an employee in Target once he's not with us anymore. Well, he's not dead. He just doesn't work with us anymore. I always have to be careful saying that. But completely like out of place, like came around a corner and he was there and in like gym shorts and a huge baggy sweatshirt, and then had like some sort of a like wrap on his head. I don't know what was going on, but was completely shocked to see me and was like, hi. And I'm like, hey, like, how are you? And he's like, I'm good. And he went off to like buy stuff. He was like, I got to get out of here. I'm out. Anyway, and I think partly because that clothing was off brand for him. He was a very buttoned up kind of person. All right, good. Go ahead.
I
Caitlin.
liked the
Sorry.
the comment about like it's how your voice too, like how you speak, how you interact with customers. Are you super professional? Are you more like laid back and friendly and like, hey girl, how's it? Like, how can I help? And or is it like, thank you so much for reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do for you today? Like, that's such an important point to and carries through kind of all levels. Like, nothing bothers me more than if I submit a form and the response that I get is incongruent with the rest of the experience. Like that post submit action, like that's part of it too, where it's like people forget to fill out whatever that auto responder should be.
And it just, thank you for submitting the form, and I'm like, but your site was so cool, and now you're being so formal and stodgy with me.
Yep. And doesn't give you like any information either, so like that is also like an extension of how you're caring for your clients too, is like, what should they expect next, right? Is it a phone call from a super cheerful rep, or a fun email discount, or whatever that might be?
Yeah, and when you do something that's incongruent with your brand, so even if you have a strong brand, if you don't follow it, it's really jarring for people. Like if you're a super bubbly, friendly company and suddenly like you're putting out edgy stuff, like I don't know what's going on here. But like if you're edgy like Wendy's and irreverent, like bring it on. Like I expect that from the Square Burger people.
Dude, so Square Burger.
I think that kind of goes to show though that like, as consumers, we kind of expect those kind of unique brand experiences, and that's what helps set your brand apart from other people. Like you're not just blending in compared to kind of the rest of your market, especially when it comes to like the local businesses. I know Zach and I were kind of talking about like, if you think about your local plumber or kind of like a industry where it's like your mechanics or something, all of their logos and like messaging really sound the same, but it's more about like, okay, how can we set ourselves apart as like far as messaging? Or if you're not really wanting to blend in, like how can we push our brand to like fit who we are as a company rather than just going with status quo?
Yeah, it's why like banks, so there's a credit union in Omaha that uses purple as a color, and part of the reason they do that is credit unions are different than banks. And banks don't use purple. Like famously, T-Mobile chose pink because nobody in wireless, everybody was blue or red or, orange was singular back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, and all those things tell a story, and they talk to who you are. Okay, so I'm listening to this and I'm sitting here going, oh my God, my brand sucks. It is weak as hell. How do I fix it?
I feel like, I guess starting from like maybe what they can do now until you can kind of get either like funds together for a more longer term investment of like a whole either like brand revamp or like rebrand in general, like figuring out kind of who you are as a company and how your tone comes across is something really easy that people can incorporate into like their day-to-day now, versus like, oh, well, I can't afford a logo right now, so I guess I can't change yet. But like maybe.
And ask your customers, right? How would you describe your experience with us? Like, would you describe the brand? Like, you could even do a survey if you wanted to. If you don't know, like, ideally, you kind of know. Are you friendly? Are you whatever? But your customers can help you. And, and that also, you want to make sure that you're tied to those customers and that your brand speaks to them.
Yeah.
So whoever's coming in, something is speaking to them, and they can probably articulate what it is or why they like, oh, everything is so simple in here. It's really easy to find. Okay, well, simplicity could be one of your core values, and that could be a big part of your brand. And your logo then should be simple, not crazy.
I think kind of tying into that, like once you do know those kind of core elements of your brand of like what you want to focus on, having a brand standards, like if you don't already have one, make one. What are you doing? And then that way, whoever's creating your marketing materials, you're all on the same page. It's not going to be like, oh, Stacy from marketing is putting out like the vibes of very, very fun, bolsterous, like, and then the brand is like you said, like maybe a credit union, and it just doesn't really match.
Yeah, I think decide and document are the first two things that you can do. And then I think get advice, like you can talk to customers, that's great. But, you talked about prioritize it, maybe save up and hire a designer. Like if you can't get a firm, get a freelancer, get somebody who understands how things work and can bring a visual identity to you and help you define it that fits that personality and voice and experience that you want people to have.
Yeah. Well, because although professional services can be a bit more of an investment and might be harder to kind of sell, your higher ups on why they should spend all of this money on it, it's an investment for a longer, you're going to have more utilization within that kind of professional services rather than a DIY logo you do on Canva that will last you maybe a year before you're like, shoot, I need a different logo variation. I need this and this done. I was just seeing a video on TikTok about a girl who was kind of working with a client and they're like, I just need a logo. And she was like, just a logo doesn't really work for your goals. I want to set you up for success. And a lot of professional services have that expertise. There's a lot of things clients don't necessarily think about where it's color accessibility or the way that your logo comes across to people, or whether it's your brand voice. Maybe that doesn't really mesh, like Rich said, with the way your logo is or the way you're presenting yourselves to customers directly. It all has to flow.
I think people don't realize even small businesses can be sued under the Americans with Disabilities Act if their website isn't ADA compatible or compliant. And that's something where okay, I've got this really great red that I'm using, and it's that is fantastic. Here's how we're going to tweak that red just slightly for the web so the contrast works better on your baby blue or whatever.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know what brand I invented that now has a red logo on a baby blue background, but it sounds good.
It's probably somewhere.
It probably is.
Yeah. When I think that's kind of the other point too of having a well-defined brand and utilizing somebody who has that expertise to help you get there is you don't know what you don't know, right? The ADA compliance piece is so huge for people who don't know that. And as soon as you bring that up, they're like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that. I never would have expected that to be a consideration. And so, that's a point that we hit on pretty consistently, especially when we're talking about web design. But it also factors if you're trying to, to your point, Megan, logo variations. When you're making a logo and you have 14 colors in it, if you go to print that on a shirt, it's either going to cost you an arm and a leg, or it's going to look like a blob because you try and print it in one or two colors and your contrast isn't there. So there's all these sure, there's that primary consideration, I need it for my social media profile where contrast and colors aren't as much of a consideration. But when you start thinking about secondary and tertiary applications, that's when that branding expertise and knowledge really, really is necessary.
One of my favorite words, tertiary. That
Isn't
third
so
tier
good?
never gets its due.
Do you know what also never gets its due? Quaternary. I'm trying to use quaternary.
Quaternary? Okay. Is it quinceaneri? No, that's a 15-year-old birthday.
That would be 15. And I don't think I can get 15. Yeah. I can't get 15 layers deep.
And I think to your point, so our logo is a good example. We used to just be orange, and we were just orange, and everything was orange, and it was on white or black or gray.
Everything was orange.
Yes. And when Jesse kind of went through our rebrand, he was like, hey, can I kind of expand our visual identity? I'm like, sure, go for it, Chief Creative Officer. Why would I tell you no?
Yeah.
We have variations of our logo on the server in black, white, orange, navy, and our green, which is very similar to the green behind Caitlin right now. Not quite the same. Our colors actually have names, and what's really funny is a couple of them, like the navy and the orange, we've used as paint in different offices. And so the names are I think it's the Sherwin-Williams paint name because it worked. It was like Discovery Blue or something like that, and Energy, whatever they were. They're in our brand guidelines, and I should have them in front of me. But we have our logo in all those variations, and what's interesting is we learned that the light green and the navy really work well together with one on the other. And it just feels more modern sometimes than the orange on white, but orange on navy also works. And what's great is when we're buying, if we were buying shirts with doing merch, we can put whatever color on whatever color that works. And if it's a really weird bright shirt, then white or black maybe. And we do have our tertiary colors. There's a lighter blue and a red that we can use as well, but they're not primary colors and they don't show up on the logo. Yeah.
But that's I like to talk about color palettes.
I know.
You don't the unexpected like quaternary color in a palette.
So I think the
really
other piece
surprise.
We've sort of danced around it, and I love throwing out weird ballparks that we have to stick with, but I think I'm pretty safe here. People talk about the investment, and it's like, okay, you might be paying $5,000 a month for your retail location. That's not a huge investment, for a decent sized store. But, so we've done logo, color, type, kind of a mini brand guidelines for, what is it, the $6,000 range, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. We've done full brands tend to run more like 12 to 15 to maybe 20, but that's where we actually dive into your culture and your values and your voice, and you get a whole document of that.
Yeah.
And I've done some of those projects where it was hundreds of thousands of dollars in an agency, but it's not like rocket science, right? Or brain surgery. It's about defining you and identifying you and putting it all together. So, like if you can't take the equivalent of 3 months rent for something that's going to be with you the entire time you have a business. Our brand guidelines, we redid them we did them initially in 2016, and then we redid them in 2020. Which we didn't fully redo them. We removed a gradient, tweaked the orange a little bit, and then expanded the color palette. But yeah, it's like, we've had those same ones now for 5 years, and we had the previous ones for 4 years, and they're actually just an extension of, an evolution of. But like all of our voice and things like that hasn't changed. Like we are who we are.
It's also, you think about like I always put it in clothing or retail terms, where you think about like a cost per wear, right? So it's something you're going to look at every day. Your clients and your customers are going to interact with it every time they visit your website or look at a business card or get a communication from you. And so how do you make that as cohesive and flexible as you need it to be for all of those applications, while still being consistent across those things? And that consistency, I think, is just the most important piece.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I would say just like a little thought I had, like more of a final thought. DIY branding is easy. Like you can go to Canva, you can go to AI, have it created, but it's going to put you further behind in the long run. AKA you're going to have to rebrand everything in 1 to 2 years versus investing in a designer or like an agency in the beginning. And I also feel like the way that goes, as far as like you don't have a story you can tell necessarily, like your story application, and like if you have a brand guidelines or a brand standard, you have an agency who creates that for you, it not only makes it easier to reference for like future design things, but then your whole team has access to that, and then it's easier to like maintain that brand. So it's not as hard to be like, okay, well, I have to make this, but I don't really know how to do it. Like, I don't know what imagery or like the colors to use. You already have that all laid out in a document, and it just makes your brand just really that more attractive to customers and more recognizable.
Yep. Do it right the first time. So thank you. I know Zach was looking for final thoughts, so that's a great one. Thank you, Megan, for joining us. It was great to not just have me and Caitlin staring at each other this time, although we love staring at each other. We do it all the time. But it was really lovely having you here. And the video, don't worry, it looks great. And Zach will make everybody look fantastic.
Thank you.
I always look the weirdest on video, so it's all good.
Tall and smart. Everyone here is tall and smart. That's what we aim for. As always, you can find our agency at antidote_71. If you have a question you'd like to send our way, you can head to ctapodcast.live to send us an email, or even better, you can leave us a voice message on our hotline at 402-718-9971. Your question might even make it onto a future episode. And
I'm going to plug the book again. Cocktail book.
You could also get a little sweet cocktail book that's branded
very
To match
branded.
the
So
podcast.
our green, there's our red that we never use. There's our blue that we don't use a lot. But it worked really well as we needed sections of the cocktail book. And obviously our navy with a little, like you adapted it though. You've got a little black kind of streak going through there. Shadow off of the martini glass.
We know what we're doing.
Yeah, I think we do. So thank you all again. As Caitlin said, hopefully you can enjoy a zombie if that's your thing. But your brand, if it feels like a hot mess or it's not documented, you've probably got a problem with it. So your first step to fix it is to define it and document it. And then we really do recommend get professional help. I mean, we all have professional help from time to time. I know Caitlin and I have had many professionals help.
Get
us.
help.
If you don't know where to start, we're a great place too. We'd be happy to talk to you.
We're wonderful.
You could call us. Yes.
We are.
You could work with
we
me.
are here. Okay, so next week we are going to be back because the things are looming and TikTok is potentially getting banned on the 20th of this month. And so we are going to talk about bourbon strawberry iced tea because you need something strong if you're going to talk about the banning of TikTok. And I will just save everything that I've read recently about that until that episode. And I think we can just wrap this one up so Zach doesn't slap us.
Can't wait.